The first thing that I would like to do is read a passage from the book Get Out of Here Alive by Saul Luckman. And that passage goes thusly: focus. Really focus all the creative power of your attention on something incredibly positive you'd love to see happen in your life for 5 minutes a day until it happens. And this is the subject of our broadcast today. Saul, thank you so much for taking this time with us.
Well, thank you for having me once again, Megan Elizabeth.
This is a really important practice, and it sounds so simple. It sounds like, oh, that's just a little throwaway thing, and it's not.
It's really not. It's within the context of this lengthy discussion that is a lot of the book on inner alchemy and using energy and attention to bring about outcomes.
And I know that for me, even with my background in having done similar practices, even with how much I have done in my life about focusing creative attention, when I happened on this particular passage in the book, my brain lit up, my body brain lit up. And I experienced a new commitment to that kind of practice, and I put the book down and I went and I did it. And it was not very long. It was not very many days until the thing that I was envisioning came to pass.
Wow.
In a really cool way. And I was like, oh, yes, I knew that this was important. Thank you, Soul, for reminding me. Now I'm doing it. And so I've been doing it since. I don't know how many weeks it's been since I finished the book the first time. But I've been doing that since I got to that page. That's not even halfway through the book. So I've been doing it since January-ish, I guess.
Very, very cool. I love that. I really, really love that. And there's a myriad of different ways one can go about energizing this type of manifestation potential in oneself. One can kind of map this onto other modalities, other teachings, other ways of doing things. I have an entire part of the pragmalchemy exercises that I'm rolling out over on Substack that has to do with utilizing the energy of the mind in projecting into the dream body to utilize that as a locus and a logos for starting to reinvent the body and the body's experience in the world. So there's a lot of different directions you can go in with this very simple idea. In that instance, you're basically projecting into a mental space that's a little bit like the construct in the Matrix. So you're actually visualizing your dream body, your etheric double, as yourself, and you're getting to know it. And as you get to know it, you are visualizing it in perfect health and in a robust way. And you can visualize yourself somewhat younger if you want to roll back the clock.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are potentially things that one can do, and you can utilize some of the energy that you've stored away in your philosopher's stone, in your solar plexus, to bring about these outcomes in tandem with your attentive focus on those outcomes. So you can sort of multitask and energize the very things that you're also energizing with your visualization. And even though you might be utilizing some of your energy, the act of visualizing very potently and in a focused manner increases energy. So it's almost like you don't lose anything, you just exchange the energy.
There's this it's such a simple entry point, and of course that appeals to me tremendously, because so many people they don't know where to start with the complexity. But once they get started, once they find that entry point, then there's this whole massive field of potential experimentation that is really individual to each person. It's like what you describe in the book is a series of different starting points, and then each individual, through the practice, has to sort of discover what that is for them. And I feel like there's so much fertile creative potential there.
Oh yeah, I do too. You know, the last thing I want to do is create a rigid methodology that everyone has to adhere to. I want to present concepts that are incredibly malleable and empowering for people wherever they are, whatever they're doing. It's just a matter of uh, people taking the time to understand what I'm saying and what the principles are, and then intelligently and responsibly adapting it to where they are. So we lost
Oh,
audio.
there we are. I'm going to put you on the screen for a moment and let you hold court. Someone is knocking persistently on my front door, and I'm going to go stop the knocking. But I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, that's cool. I'm holding court right now. Let's see. What do I want to do? I will read. I've been over on Goodreads where the book is available. Get Out of Here Alive, and I've been slowly uploading quotes from it to the Goodreads quotes database. So if you've read the book and you want to leave a review over on Goodreads, they are now accepting reviews, and the same goes for BookBub.com, which is now finally accepting reviews, even though the book has not been officially published. It'll be out on Amazon and other retailers as of March 20th, and only then can you leave reviews on those venues. And I hope that some of you will do that. But in the meantime, if you'd like to help me out, you can leave a review on BookBub and Goodreads. So a couple of quotes. I've just been kind of going through the book and saying, "Oh, that's a good quote. That's a good quote." And let me see if I can find those right now. I'm on the spot, but I'll do my best. So please bear with. Let's see. Yeah, like today I was writing about. Are you there? Are you there, Megan?
I'm here now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you saved me. I was going to have to just totally improvise. I was saying that I'm leaving quotes. I'm extracting quotes from the book and I'm uploading them to the quote database over on Goodreads where people can go and check those out. So that it's fun because you can tag each quote with up to 10 tags, and it makes it very searchable for people looking for a quote on inspiration or simulation theory or energy medicine, alchemy, inner alchemy, whatever. So
There are really good quotes in that book. I was noticing very frequently that different passages were really jumping out at me. And one of the things that happens to me with your books a lot is that I start to regret not having started a document when I started the book, so that I could remind myself of where all of these really great quotes were. I've sort of started doing that, but just sort of minimally. I'm delighted to hear that there's a sort of quotes knowledge base kind of set of functions there to explore.
yeah, that's awesome. I've had a similar experience. I remember going through, I think it was Callie the Destroyer a couple books back, and even though I really liked the book, I didn't feel like there were that many quotes. It's a novel, so you have to realize it's not nonfiction. But I just didn't feel like there were that many quotable passages. I did extract some pretty good ones too. But in terms of the density of quotability, Get Out of Here Alive is insane because I can't get through a page without needing to take out several passages or sentences from it. It's really pretty wild.
Yeah. And another part that I found very helpful was that in terms of the focusing, the creative focus for 5 minutes at a time, um, there are so many different suggestions throughout the book for skills someone might like to build by focusing their creative energy for 5 minutes a day. skills that maybe people don't have, people haven't thought about. Staying away from social media is maybe a really good one. um,
Right.
uh, different ways of practicing with energy that might be unfamiliar to someone until they've practiced it, but to do so with a goal in mind, especially considering how intense the world is right now, how intensely so many of us are experiencing the world. What is a key action that we want to be able to take, or what is a key goal that we want to see realized? And can we really bring our focus to that consistently over the length of even just 5 minutes? That's actually really hard for a lot of people who haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. The uh, maybe the hardest thing in some ways about the energy work is harnessing your focus long enough to even get started because we're so scattered. The premise of the book is that we don't really have our own minds. We've borrowed a an operating system from what I call the dragon, which is kind of the archontic overlord of this construct, the matrix. So its mind is designed to keep us scattered and unfocused so that we can't channel our energy, what we have left of it after being fed on and loosed all of our lives. Actually, we start out in quite a pitiful state in terms of where our energy levels are. So we're trying to build up the energy and also get better at focusing, kind of working the mental muscle of the attention so that we can sort of bring a laser like focus to the energy that we're building up in our systems to create new experiences, to create new outcomes, to visualize and manifest a different reality for ourselves, certainly individually, and also maybe collectively at some point. But I think it's ridiculous to even talk about the collective aspect in any serious way without starting with ourselves and being there for a very long time.
I will say that I and my colleagues have found that even just in terms of two of us practicing intently, it's really very different from practicing individually. If even just two people are talking about the same kind of practice, it becomes a different. I don't know how to say it exactly. It exponentiates, it seems, and it can be really profound depending on the situations people are in. Now colleagues and I have been navigating very extreme circumstances, so we really have to bring in the power of our core source selves in a way that people who are not in really extreme circumstances might not be familiar with the necessity of. But it's been really exciting to realize that even just two of us could really build productive energy in a way that we couldn't do individually, because of course, like you say, in terms of wanting the whole collective to be able to practice in these life affirming ways, it's we got a ways to go. There are some things going on
Yeah.
we got to get through.
Well, I actually believe that this type of energy has an exponential or even parabolic aspect where as it builds, it is so much more powerful than just the sum of the parts. The whole of the energy is very transformational on extremely large scales. We see hints of this in the Maharishi effect, for example, where you have meditators in an area just meditating away, and then all the crime rates fall and accidents stop, car accidents and that kind of thing, just they almost go to zero. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, at least as a starting point. But the energy cultivation at an alchemical, shamanic, and alchemical level is I believe, a lot more powerful than just simple meditation. And when you have a bunch of alchemists coming together, which probably isn't going to happen because most alchemists are very, very solitary creatures. But even then, I believe, yes, in the idea of a kind of morphic field, a morphic resonance that's happening between anyone projecting, learning to be a better projectionist of energy, a better uh, alchemist, a better shaman, and these are hooking up way outside the realm of just the conscious mind. They're hooking up in the morphic, in the etheric, and that's where, if we see changes on a larger level, it's going to happen there, because when what it means for a lot of people to power up in this way, you can't have that phenomenon happening without simultaneously the dragon losing a lot of its power, because
Yeah.
that power is drawn from the dragon ultimately, and the various scenarios that are created by the dragon. So as we empower ourselves, we disempower the dragon. This is the whole dynamic. That it's as simple as that. If you want to know how to fix the world, that's how it works.
I would love to touch on a particular subject intersection about this. The way that I describe the frame relates to my experience of years ago having maybe 10 or 12 years ago, something like that, 12 or 13 years ago. I started meditating very intently for long periods of time, and the intersection of subcultures that I was part of at the time felt that that was a non-productive activity, that was a problem to be spending that much time in meditation. And it was only a lot of years later that I started to get some social nutrients from people describing some of what, like you're describing, where there are really powerful implications of, for instance, silent stillness. And that has been lost in a lot of parts of society, where people feel like, well, they must be doing something useless or problematic if they're not being productive in that particular colonial imperialist way. And I know that a lot of people that I've encountered, especially over the past decade, it feels scary to spend 5 minutes focusing on something, because that could not possibly solve these problems. Like, we better do something, we better do something. And of course, people's bodies are being destroyed by that kind of stress. The body needs the silent stillness. And so the opportunity for that creative focus, even just in 5 minutes a day, to discover what can be possible, I wonder if you might speak to that in any way.
Just in 5 minutes a day. Yeah, I think 5 minutes a day is a great starting point. It may sound like very little, but in terms of how difficult it is to marshal your resources to maintain your focus, 5 minutes is a great starting point. If you can actually visualize something without straying from that thought for 5 minutes, that is an achievement. You should celebrate. I don't know, pat yourself on the back and go out and do something you really love, because you've definitely earned it. When you can get to that point, of course, then it's possible to begin amplifying your own power, which again can have an exponential and potentially even parabolic aspect as more and more of it amasses. I mean, you're talking about pooling your power into the solar plexus area and compacting it so that you begin creating what's been called the philosopher's stone. This is not a linear type of scenario. This is a multi-dimensional scenario where you're pooling in energy from multi-dimensions in your multi-dimensional cells. You're actually uniting yourself across all dimensions in your own philosopher's stone. That's what this thing actually is. It's you. It's just you wherever you are, and it's pulled into the center of your body, and then it begins to compound itself in a way with more energy, and as you learn to focus the attention also creates energy and brings it into the body that you can then store in the stone. So that's a major teaching that it starts out in Get Out of Here Alive, and I'm continuing it with the pragmalchemy exercises. It's something I'll be rolling out over the next months and years.
One of the things that's wonderful about the way you present these materials is that it's direct enough, it's straightforward enough, which is rare, to find these subjects addressed head on in a fairly simple way. It presents this opportunity for the individual to broaden that territory and explore more deeply in what is the visual experience, what is the energetic experience that the individual body is experiencing. And I noticed that recently more than in a while. I mean, I got addicted to meditating, 12 or 13 years ago or whenever it was, in the most healing, healthy kind of way, the most stabilizing kind of way. And then I lost it over many years because of injuries and violence occurring and hardship situations. And over all of that, it's been very difficult for me to regain focus, especially with multiple concussion injuries over 10 years. Focus is a skill, is a neurological function that is really important. And I started to feel that positive addiction to it again very quickly, and experiencing the different kinds of world explorations that occur when you're traveling through the energy. It's very visual for me, and it's very kinetic for me. And I know it's different for everybody, but to become more familiar with my body's own most necessary flows is such a gift. And a lot of that was catalyzed by me reading this book. It was really, really wonderful.
You made me just think about some of the implications of not only the energy work but the block work, the myofascial work in combination. Have you had a chance to put your third eye on the block in that alchemical child pose yet? That's
Not yet. I've been starting to. I'm doing a lot of visualizing myself doing the exercises before physically doing them, like getting a stronger sense of them.
yes,
I've been taking the corners of the block to these points inside the rib cage and
nice.
above the hips. And I've been spending a lot of time just like with those really subtle motions. I had been looking at the third eye exercise. Do you want to say more about that?
Just that it would be a very good thing to do for, I mean, potentially for the ability to focus. You're also activating the whole sort of pineal third eye area. You're increasing melatonin. Melatonin is a hugely important hormone. Of course, physically we know this, and we're discovering so much more about it. The more melatonin you have, the less chance you have of having cancer, for example.
Huh.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of very cool implications about having more melatonin in your system, and actually can't get enough of it because, I mean, if you take it supplementally, it will detox you, and
Mm.
you work up to that. But one of the nice things about melatonin is that you could flood your body with it, and there's not a negative feedback loop like there is with other hormones. So it actually just gets better in some ways and changes in its effectiveness as you increase your melatonin levels. And one of my beliefs is that when people uh, activate more and more of this ability to project their consciousness, they're actually increasing their melatonin levels simultaneously. They go completely hand in hand. So the in yoga you have the child's pose. So in pragmalchemy, it's awakening the alchemical child, where you use the block and you put your head down on the Ouroboros block, and then that compresses the fascia around the third eye. Of course, with all of these concussions, that could release fascia around the whole cranium. that could be very beneficial for letting healing take place in some of those areas. I mean, on a physical level, and of course, energetically, lots would follow as well if that were to occur. So anyway, it just seemed like a no-brainer, pun intended, to do that particular pose and exercise. And when you're doing that, of course, you're also doing the first projectionist technique, where you go into your mental chamber and you're seeing your etheric double or your dream body in that construct, that matrix-like construct.
You said no brainer, maybe super brainer.
Super brainer. Sure. Anyway, but I respect moving slowly with this because it is powerful. I understand that what it means to be really hypersensitive, because I was that way for a very long time, and even today I don't just jump into things energetically, because I tend to take the energy and run with it, so I don't want to blow myself out of the water.
One of the things that really drew me to your work and really caused your work to resonate with group members in the intuitive network is that you describe at some length in a number of different places how bad things got for you before you started making them better more consistently, and the birth of regenetics. And I've been reading and rereading parts of that pretty frequently, especially over the past few months. And it's difficult for people to even conceive of how severe those circumstances can be if they're not experiencing them. Even people who have experienced them in the past maybe like just aren't quite realizing what that can be like. And for there to be modalities that help bring people back from these circumstances, including in situations where we don't find support from establishment medicine, sometimes at all, it's a really amazing experience to be able to incrementally construct one's wholing process, one's healing, one's wholeness process. And there are a lot of touch points in your work that, because you've shared about your experiences, it becomes immediately more accessible to people who are like, oh, this is just another person who's talking about the energy work thing is like spiritual bypassing and it's not real and it doesn't really help anyone and this is going to waste my time. But when you start reading about a person in your position developing these modalities from that kind of severity, it's really notable. I haven't found that very much, at least not in modalities that I've then been able to use so successfully.
Yeah, I guess it is a somewhat rare. I know that you have lots of wounded healers, and I would have been one of those, absolutely. So maybe it's not quite as rare as some other things. I've been doing this for I've been, working with people with Regenetics for over 2 decades. So it's a little bit old hat for me now. And I'm not surprised when people have breakthroughs, but a lot of times people do come to it with some level of skepticism along these lines. You mean I just need to do like a 30-minute session? And then that's going to initiate a 9-month plus process, and all this stuff's going to happen energetically, and I just have to kind of be with it and be conscious. And my answer is basically yes. There's nothing else to do except be with your process as it unfolds, and pay attention to your your prompts, your internal prompts. People get hung up on the food thing. So you say in your book that cravings aren't a bad thing when you're doing regenetics. So that means I can just listen to my cravings and eat whatever my body's telling me to eat, even if I'm allergic to it or whatever. And my answer is, well, I'm not a doctor, but you can try the food. Lots of people think they're allergic to something, or they used to be, and they no longer are, or the sensitivities are much less. And that often changes positively over those months and even beyond the potentiation process, where people then end up being able to eat whatever they want to, and people will change their diets over the months and years following Regenetics just by listening to those cravings. Like, this is what I need now. And so you'll have people swinging through different diets as their bodies are rebuilding and refortifying, and they've learned to trust that inner voice. I mean, what an amazing thing to watch people do this. Other really funny things that happen include, people who have had that, who were just, in the vernacular, just sick as dogs, right? Just absolutely allergic to everything, chronic fatigue-ish, fibromyalgia-ish, et cetera, multiple chemical sensitivities. The people just really beaten up people, like myself, like I was for a decade. And they start this process, and then they start to feel better, and they start eating differently, and then they find some other energy work. They maybe do some body work, they get into some breath work, they start being able to exercise a little bit more, and about 9 months later they're feeling pretty good, even if they're not 100% yet. And then I might have an exchange with them, and I'll ask how they're doing, and they'll tell me that they're doing great, but they will not have connected it to potentiation. Right. There is a total disconnect. Even at that point, when their lives are changed, they have forgotten what started this entire unfoldment, which I used to take personally, and it used to really piss me off. But later on, I thought, well, that's really actually the goal, is for people just to be living their lives, not caring why it happened. I don't want to create a religion or something that, people have to see me as some kind of guru. I just want to give the people the opportunity to have more fulfilling lives. That's one of my main mandates in everything that I do.
It's there's so much that I want to say about Regenetics. We're going to have an upcoming broadcast where we focus entirely on Regenetics. There are so many parts of this that overlap with what I see in the testimonials people write you about it, but are different in certain ways for my most severely affected colleagues in the network who need certain touch points that happen to be in your work. And my personal experience of potentiation really seemed to resonate on those touch points specifically. And if I start going into them now, we'll be here another hour. There are a lot of really specific reasons that works. There are a lot of specific reasons that it's so powerful in so many people's lives. And I certainly come from places where people would be very wary and very skeptical and be like, this doesn't, like, where is this? What is this based in? Like, what, and to go through the materials, to go through Conscious Healing, and to go through Potentiate Your DNA, these two books particularly, which I think you said that Get Out of Here Alive is the unofficial third book. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I thought of it sort of as book 3 on the Regenetics method, mainly because people for years and years and years and years wanted a book on the nature of the matrix, the construct, and how we can use intention and our power, our newly recuperated power through Regenetics to consciously engage creating better outcomes. And I have some tips in PYD and in Conscious Healing, but it wasn't the full picture of what I wanted to present. And frankly, I wasn't exactly clear on that for a number of years in terms of where I saw it. And that changed when Get Out of Here Alive just kind of snapped together, and that book happened fast. I had been working on some articles that I drew on and some videos that I drew on for some of the chapters, but the book itself assembled itself, kind of wrote itself with lightning speed. It was really quite something, and that's how I knew that it was finally there, because I didn't have to labor over it. It just kind of, it was almost like Harry Potter waving a wand, and the book just put itself together. You could just see the pages just rearranging themselves, and the letters just moving around, and it was just so incredibly fast and miraculous.
One of the things that I really love to do that not all, when I say this to people aren't always very sure how they feel about it, but I like to read specific multiple books at the same time and hop between them and hop to different places in them and let them kind of synthesize. And I've been in Conscious Healing and Potentiate Your DNA and Get Out of Here Alive in a mix since finishing them before. Now I'm hopping through them in these non-linear ways, and a bunch of different things I'm being reminded of things, and they're interweaving, and I'm noticing aspects of the processes described being especially complexly activated in my body. And I say complexly like it's layered and it's intricate, but it's also very simple. It's also very natural feeling to me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it to me, what you're describing is a kind of process of integration. That's what I've always thought about in terms of regenetics in particular, was that it was a kind of biospiritual integration. It was bringing the spirit into the body, or the body into the spirit, or both at the same time. I don't see a real separation there. And mostly when I say spirit, I mean the energy body, the dream body. One could talk about souls and other things like that, but I think that gets a little um, maybe triggering. I know I write about Keats's notion in Get Out of Here Alive, that we are actually in a veil of soul making. And if you understand what he's saying there, it turns a lot of spirituality as it's currently practiced and understood on its head. The idea is that no, we don't come here as souls from some other life that we're reincarnating again or anything like that in a direct way. I'm not saying that energy isn't reused or aspects of our experience might not be reused, but he's basically saying that we show up in this veil of soul making not being a soul, and that the soul is forged here in this crucible.
Wow, that's really interesting. I would like to look more deeply into that. That sounds like something worth investigating further.
Well, he wrote that in a letter, I believe, to his brother when he was dying of tuberculosis in Rome. And so he was dying, and he knew he was dying, if I'm not mistaken. And so he was thinking very deeply about these subjects, and that's the conclusion that he reached. And it wasn't necessarily a happy conclusion, because I think the soma and the lotus that people take these days is that, oh, we just reincarnate or we go to heaven or whatever. It's almost like a way of ignoring the possibility that maybe we just die. Maybe our consciousness is simply reabsorbed, and we are lost as individuals at that point in time.
And yet, if we are all the same enormous metacosmic organism, experiencing separateness or differentiation, it's just I have a hard time sometimes now thinking in terms of being expressly only an individual. I mean, my sense of self has changed since all of these encounters with death. I really feel deeply connected to this greater wholeness. And I feel like it's not possible to separate me from that wholeness ultimately, but it is possible to have experiences of separation that can be absolutely excruciating.
Mm, mm. Right, right. Yeah, the ultimate kind of absurdly profound paradox that we get into in this discussion is that there is that oneness. Ultimately, there is a oneness. I mean, there's at least a oneness in this system that we're in. If you look at certain understandings of what a black hole is, you go into it, you come out a white hole. you know, I believe in a lot of ways that that's how reality functions, and so that we're going through experiences until we can reunite with the galactic center, basically the consciousness of the great central sun. And when we do that, basically we probably pass through into another world, another set of constructs. This is very in keeping with what's taught, for example, in the law of one, where you basically just keep going up the octaves, where you think you think you've reached the end of the road, and it's just another beginning.
I keep sort of connecting us back to 5 minutes of creative focus. And we started out this session talking about how wide ranging the options become from that really simple entry point. And we have really ranged really broadly from there. But that, you know, creative focus makes the difference between recognizing and working with the kinds of circumstances you're describing and maybe never recognizing them at all, just being in a state of suffering and not having any sense that it's possible to become different. Did I say that? Did the words come out of my mouth the right way? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you made me think of that wonderful scene. I mean, I say wonderful, fascinating scene with Natalie Portman in V for Vendetta. This really intense movie that came out a couple of decades ago, where she's taken prisoner in a jail, and she suffers a lot as a prisoner, as a young woman in this kind of futuristic dystopian society, and she finally realizes that the prison door is open and the guard is a mannequin, right? So her focus has kept her imprisoned. So when people talk about the reincarnation trap or the prison planet or anything like that, that is only true to the extent that our focused inattention in this instance, away from what it could be, and where we allow our energy to be focused into a different outcome from one that we would actually want. We are responsible for that ultimately.
And if we don't do it, it doesn't happen. If we don't choose to focus our forces of creativity to maintain that focus, to choose, then there are a lot of influences in the world. Whether some people in this room, definitely we say the dragon, and we know what we mean because of the books that you've written, Saul. With Get Out of Here Alive, Kali the Destroyer comes up for me a lot because I was having a lot of thoughts about the way you depicted the dragon in that book as I was reading Get Out of Here Alive. But anyone else who doesn't recognize that particular reference still, I hope, generally recognizes how many vast influences there are, powerful influences in the world that want to direct our attention and want to direct our creative focus. So that if we're not choosing for ourselves, even in just 5 minutes a day, where to direct our creative focus, something else is steering us around in a way maybe we don't even recognize.
Absolutely. That's sort of the subject, or one of the main subjects in The World, Cult, and You.
Yeah.
This idea that the world is constructed as a series of nested subcults that are all a function of the dragon, or what I call the great parasite in that book. And these subcults are designed to sidetrack us, to take our energy, to steal our focus, and to place us into less than desirable situations, ultimately, so that we'll get so fed up with being in those situations that we will step outside our comfort zone and begin doing new things to try to break the pattern.
And that's such a blessing. The adversary as teacher is one of my favorite frames.
Yes, yes, I love that too. I think people typically think of, there's a lot of good chatting going on, so I was over here responding to somebody, but a lot of people think that attention is just a given, or it's a passive type of faculty, and I see it as an incredibly active, creative faculty.
Yeah. And the more we practice with that, and the more we become really conscious and conscientious with it, the more we can develop our personal power in choosing more potently and not just being steered around by whatever influence happens to be able to make money off of steering us around.
Well, we lost you again.
Did I disappear? Did my sound disappear?
Your sound just blipped for like a second or two.
Oh, what was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about being steered around.
The more potently we practice something like this 5 minutes a day exercise, the less we are allowing other influences to steer us around and make money off doing so.
Yes, that's really, really true. There's a lot of like ways that one could approach this subject. There's the whole shamanic concept that someone in the chat just mentioned, which is the petty tyrant, and the way that our attention is moved around by the force of this petty tyrant in us, and so yeah, that's a Castaneda concept that I really like. So, yep, I agree.
I'm really, really glad that we got to take this time today. And I want to encourage everyone to take a look at your book if they haven't yet. Are you still offering review copies right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we can still go and sign up for that process. People who would like to do that, you can actually get the book and read it. It's going to be released on the 20th of March. Is that right?
Yes. You can
Great.
go to books.saulluckman.com and get your free review copy. It's coming out on March 20th, which is the equinox. I thought that was a good date to bring the book out. So we'll be springing ahead with the book. And then you can also, if that's not your cup of tea, you can support the book by going ahead and pre-ordering a copy. If you don't want a review copy, you can pre-order a copy on Amazon, and that really helps with the book's algorithmic positioning, which is really important in terms of how successful it will be in the early days. And the early days really establish how many sets of eyes are on your book for the first month or two, and that can really make or break a book in terms of its long-term, not so much long-term success, but certainly short to mid-term success.
And we definitely want more people to be more familiar with more of these ideas. They're a lot of food for discernment, and we need more discernment to be happening in the world. We need more conscious practice and creative focus in intentional ways to be happening in the world. And it's one of the reasons that I really loved this book.
I agree, and I appreciate that. I was hoping that this book would be a kind of intervention in the conversation and a call to not just sovereignty, but personal agentry, where we're really looking at how we're responsible for all of it. We're not children here. We are adults, or we're meant to be, and we have to take responsibility for our lives and the state of the world.
Yeah.
And we can't do that by looking outside of ourselves and pointing fingers. This is this tribalism that we're seeing, this crazy divide and conquer that's going on in the world, and this outsourcing of our ability to be conscious change agents. It's just, it doesn't work that way. That's what the dragon wants. It wants us to think and act like victims at all times in all ways. So my hope was that this book would get people, even people who maybe aren't into alchemy or the idea of the philosopher's stone or immortality. Maybe these things just don't resonate with you. But half the book has nothing to do with that whatsoever. It's about learning what the nature of the world is and how to harness your attention to change at least your own life.
I am always blown away by these conversations, and I hope all our viewers and listeners will come find you at saulluckman.substack.com and take up this 5 minutes a day creative focus practice as soon as you feel moved to it, maybe even before you feel moved to it. It might activate something just by testing the waters. Thank you, Saul, for hanging out with us today, and I really look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. This has been really fun. I appreciate it. I have enjoyed, well, the last one was great, and I've just enjoyed your I don't know, the change that's happening in you has been really encouraging and fun to just be a part of and to interact with. I mean, you're really a light, and I just am super grateful for you and your platform.
We're continuing to document the amazing occurrences on the basis of these practices. So I look forward to a lot more of that unfolding. And thank you for your part in it.
Well, back at you.
This has been the Intuitive Public TV. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. We will see you again very soon.